So I'm here today to talk about the Drupal community. And the Drupal community is completely awesome. It is the one thing that I think really differentiates Drupal from other software platforms out there is the people in this room. And the people who help make it happen, and the people who support the people helping to make it happen, and everything else. For example, we have nearly 3,000 people who've contributed to Drupal 8 so far. We're at like 2965. So if you've never contributed to Drupal 8 before, you should come to the sprint tomorrow, and then we'll make that happen. And I wanted to call out a few of the people, in the audience, probably not in the audience, they probably slept in, but these are some really awesome people who are both locally and also here who have helped make Drupal 8 awesome. For example, we have Jennifer Hodgson over here. She and Joe Schindelar are working on the Drupal 8 user manual, and they're really pumped up about that. They're actually making a sort of editorially controlled set of documentation that is short and brief and gets across the concepts. And this is something that our project has desperately needed for a very, very long time. People like Renee, who came to DrupalCon and was giving, wellness, massages and essential oil therapy and stuff to very, very stressed out core developers. We have people like Tess. Tess has actually gotten involved not as a core developer, but as a contributed module porter. She's been porting the flag module and documenting it as she goes to talk about her process. That insight has been extremely invaluable to the people actually working on the core product so we can help make the APIs better, so we can help manage the release better, and things like that. Mark Drummond up there, he has worked on a number of things, but primarily the mobile experience, responsive images. You have Matthew, boop. He's worked a lot on the configuration management system. So just even in this local community, there are like dozens of people who have really helped contribute a bunch to Drupal 8. And I just want to say we should give a round of applause for everybody, but especially those people. And our community is kind of wacky. We have Drupal Bacon. We have there's numerous people now who have Drupal tattoos, which is that's serious commitment. There's Drupal license plates. There's Drupal socks. I have a little Drupal hat for my daughter, which she no longer fits into, so now it's on a teddy bear. That kind of thing. Like we really, really love each other, and we love Drupal, and that's something that makes the Drupal community really awesome. And in fact, Dries, the project lead that we were talking about, he has this quote that he's fond of saying, which is that it's really the Drupal community and not actually the software that makes Drupal what it is. Because if you think about it, we have rewritten Drupal 100 times. Well, probably 8 times. But still, the software as it was when I started in 2005 is completely unrecognizable from Drupal 8. It shares a couple of the same concepts. It looks different. It acts different. The modules are different. Everything about Drupal is different. But the core of these people who have stuck around and have been and the new people coming in, it's just there's something about Drupal that is sort of magic. And so this talk is trying to figure out how is it that came to be, and what lessons can we take away from that can help other communities. And by community, I mean this could be your organization, this could be your church, this could be your little committee on whatever, that kind of thing. There's a lot of things that just about getting people together that I think have really worked for Drupal. And so I'm trying to sort of talk about lessons that I have learned in my journey in the Drupal project. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So about me, this is some stuff about me. I am a core committer, so that means that I review the patches, and I do say no, but I try to say no nicely and say, no, but how about this thing, and that sort of stuff. I did write a book. Don't recommend that, by the way, but if you like pain and long hours and not getting paid for your time, book writing is really fun. But it's great that it's meaningful to other people. So we wrote using Drupal because we knew that people needed to understand how Drupal worked at a site builder level in order to really proceed. So that's why we wrote that book. So I'm really happy to hear that it's been helpful to other people. I work at Acquia. I'm a Drupal Association board member, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying this stuff to toot my own horn. More so, I'm trying to use myself as an example of somebody who literally grew up in this community, and what different aspects of the community and my personal life and stuff caused that to happen. So that hopefully these things can be replicated in the future. So, let's take a time machine back to 1983. This is the last picture of me in a dress. So I'm like 3 or 4 here, something like that. And that was around the time that we got, you can fact check me on this, but that's around the time we got a VIC-20. Anybody have one of those at home? Yeah, you probably still do, actually. By the way, this is my mom, Jeannie, everybody. She came here. Yeah, so the VIC-20 was this big honking keyboard, and you plugged it into the television. And there were cartridges you could plug into the back, and a tape deck, and all kinds of weird stuff that would make no sense to people. But I got this cool magazine called 321 Contact. And in the back of 321 Contact magazine, they would have like 8 pages of basic code. And if you typed it all very meticulously, you would get a box that went like, boop. And then you'd be like, I'm so cool, I took over the world, because you made a box go boop. And then, like you'd change some things and it would blow up on you and you'd try to figure it out. So that is how I ended up learning programming, is just copying these codes out of the back of a magazine, playing with it, trying to break it, trying to fix it, and this kind of a thing. That also fueled my completely unhealthy obsession with video games, which continues to this day. But what that did for me is it really got me into technology. I wanted to understand how games worked. I wanted to understand how to build your own games. I never really got that far because I sort of got into web stuff, but it was really important to have that early on. So my advice to you is, when you want to get people in your community, get them while they're young. And you have to do that especially if you're in a technology community, if they're girls. And you say, why would you need to do that? Well, let me explain. So when you're a girl and you're growing up, your role models kind of look like this, right? And what special talents do princesses have? They fall asleep. They have really long hair. They fall in love with a man and they can't get him, so they get a sea witch to turn them into a human. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, there's not a lot of princesses walking around there really kicking butt. There's starting to be changes there, but in general, your role models are not really. They're definitely not at a computer. They're definitely not doing anything with technology. They're probably fawning over some guy. And you're taught from a very young age that you're going to be the nurturer in your family. You're going to be taking care of people. You should be nice to everybody. It's rude or it's aggressive if you, are speaking your mind and these kinds of things. And then when you do see a woman with a computer, it generally looks like this. It's like, oh God, where's a man to help me figure out this infernal thing? And then when women and technology do mix, it tends to look like this. Right? So, you have these things just baked into you from the very beginning that basically say technology is not for you. That's for somebody else. But let's say you're like, screw that. I'm not listening to societal norms. I'm getting into technology, right? Then you have this problem where you're the only woman in a group of 4,000 people, and people are like, oh my God, what's this strange person here with, that's. And then you also have this problem. So this was a survey that was done, excuse me, by the European Union, I think, back a few years ago. And the question on the survey was, have you ever experienced, or have you ever observed discriminatory behavior against women in open source? And the graph is very telling, because all of the men said no, and all of the women said yes. So they are observing exactly the same behaviors going on, and reaching 2 completely different conclusions about what's happening. So we see this disconnect happening a lot, a lot of why can't you be less sensitive, and this kind of stuff. And it's fundamentally we have a huge disconnect here. So it is very challenging for women to get into technology still. So anything that you can do to help get them in early, encourage them from a early age is really, really good. So Matthew has a great talk about this topic later, so I'm not going to take away his steam. Here are some links, though, about getting kids involved in technology early, and then some specific links about getting, helping women to find technology awesome and stuff like that. So that's what I have to say about that. Now let's fast forward to about 1995.
Awesome.
Yeah. I had the spiky collar. Yeah. I had the fingerless gloves. Yeah. I was rocking and rolling back then. Megadeth. Oof. Okay, anyway. That's when we got our first computer. So it was a Pentium 133, and it had a 14.4 modem. Yeah, really cool stuff. And that was my first exposure to the internet, and my mind just went, it was amazing. Because I grew up in Rochester. You can all groan now. Oh, Rochester. But it was a smaller town, and not a lot of diversity. There's actually more diversity now, I think. But you know what I mean? It was I didn't feel like I could find anyone who was like me. Kind of growing up gay and stuff like that was really awkward and weird. But it was cool because on the internet I could find people who were like me and liked the same things I did and like to, and so I just dove in, and I tried to learn everything there was to know about how the internet worked and what you could do with it. So I taught myself networking and programming and how the web worked and all this kind of stuff. And naturally, I came across Linux. So this was around the time when Debian Linux fit on 7 floppy disks. And I think now it doesn't even fit on 7 terabyte hard drives or something. But anyway, so I installed Linux, and then I got exposed to these guys. Linus, he invented Linux. Richard Stallman was the grandfather, whatever, of the GPL. Eric Raymond, he was the one who sort of coined the term open source. And Kevin Mitnick was a hacker and was into, sort of creative ways to circumvent systems. And I really looked up to these people. And, I was like, wow, these people are amazing. And I could never be like them because I'm just this little high school student. And how could I ever compete with that? So the first thing I thought I knew about open source is that you must be this smart to contribute to open source. How many people feel that way? Yeah. Right? You get this impression that it's like you see these big kind of personalities, like Dries or whoever, and you're like, wow, those people are really, really cool, and they really know what they're doing, and I couldn't ever possibly be like that because I'm not a real coder or because, I'm like, whatever the excuse is, but you think you can't be like them. So I want to try and dispel this myth right now. A lot of people think that this is how improvements are made in software. And I apologize if you've seen this before. I use these slides a lot because it's so important to me that we dispel this myth. So a lot of people think that there's Gina the genius out there, right? And she has an enormous head because she's a genius, right? And she thinks to herself, she gets this amazing idea. And she says, well, I'm just going to whip out my text editor, which obviously is Emacs, and then I'm going to write all this stuff, and then...
Emacs for life, bro.
I use VI myself, but we're not going to start a bloodbath here. No, okay. And so she instantly writes it. It's right the first time. Everyone else says, wow, that's amazing, and that is your best work yet. How many people think that this is how open source contribution works? Good, because that is not how it works at all. This is how it really works in real life. All right, so you have Edwina, the end user, okay? And she is really mad because she just tried your software and she found a bug. So she issues a bug report in the issue queue. And even if that's the last thing Edwina ever does and she stomps off mad and she goes and uses WordPress after or whatever, that is still a really valuable contribution if she's able to create a bug report that is more detailed than it's broke, fix it. If she's able to say, I clicked here, I did this, and this happened, and it blew up, and here was the error message, that's huge because it means that somebody who works on the software can actually reproduce that and actually fix the problem. So don't underestimate the value of a good bug report. So then you have Paula, the programmer. She hit the same bug. She finds the issue in the issue queue, and she tries to fix it. And she marks it needs review. And then you have Tatiana, the tester, and she's got big Coke bottle glasses because she looks at bugs all day. And she looks at Paula's code, and she goes, that's not quite right. And so she posts some feedback like, your coding standards are off, and oh, by the way, maybe you don't want to do that 47,000 times, but do it in a loop after doing it once, this kind of stuff. And she marks it needs work. Paula's like, okay, cool, I can do that, and I will do it. A lot of people, by the way, are scared to do that, to like criticize someone else's work and say, well, it's not quite right, because you don't want to hurt their feelings. It is really, really valuable to have very positively reinforced feedback to your work. No one is ever going to be sad because you made their work better. What they will be sad about is that you didn't look at their patch and mark it needs work because you didn't want to hurt their feelings. So to them, they're going to think, nobody cares about my patch. It's just sitting there and nobody looks at it. So don't be scared to try things out and post back what happened. Even if it wasn't positive. Just don't be a jerk about it. That's all. So, Paula posted again, needs review. And then we have Wendy, the poor soul stuck on Windows XP. And do you know what she says? You guys know what she says. She says it breaks in IE6. And also mind your spelling. So she marks it needs work. And Paula says, all right, let's try this again. And then Tatiana says, hey, that's a lot better. Not only did you fix my feedback, but you also fixed your spelling and grammar. So let's mark it, reviewed, and test it. And then someone like myself will take a look at it. That's how open source happens. It's individual people, many of them, coming together, each contributing the little bit of thing that they know, whether it's how to reproduce a bug, whether it's how to write a patch, whether it's how to review a patch, what the coding standards are, or whether it's just how to write English properly, you know? All of those things come together and they make a change that we end up rolling into the software. So my lesson learned from this is that we've got to destroy this Einstein complex, because the really insidious thing about the Einstein complex is the people who have this are the people who already love what you do, right? They're the people who are like, Drupal is so great, and I would love to contribute to that, but I can't. And those people are the people that you want in your software, because they're going to be the people that go, you know, light years ahead of everybody else because they want to be there and they feel like they can't. So one thing that we do in the Drupal community to help with this is we have what are called novice issues. So we go through and we tag individual issues that are sort of like low-hanging fruit. They're not, you know, they can be stuff like there's a typo here, or they can be stuff, it's basically stuff that would take, like Larry Garfield, 8 seconds to fix. But we tell Larry Garfield, don't fix it, just make an issue and tag it novice, and then someone else can spend 8 weeks on that fix. But they'll learn everything they need to know about contributing to the process. So they'll learn Git and the issue queue workflow and how our community norms work and these kinds of things. So now fast forward to 2005. I had my Tank Girl haircut back then. That was pretty cool. And this program called Google Summer of Code got announced. How many people have heard of that? Oh, good. That's great. Yeah. So if you haven't, this is basically it's like a mentorship program where Google will pay students a couple $1,000 over the summer to work with an open source project, and they pair you up with a mentor in that community who kind of helps you through, and either you propose your own ideas or the community proposes their ideas and they give you stuff to work on. And this was critical for me because I had this Einstein complex, and Google Summer of Code was like, oh, well, if they're letting students do this, then they must know that I don't know everything yet, so maybe I can try to get in this way. And that was it. That was the only thing that would have ever broken that barrier for me, I'm convinced. And that was huge. And so when I got into the community, you know, I was very terrified and stuff, and we'll talk about that later, but it was that idea that it was like a little poke a hole in that wall I had built up for myself about how open source worked. So I got involved in Drupal. I got involved in Drupal because I had never used Drupal before Summer of Code, never even installed it, nothing. But what I had done is viewed source on every web page I visited ever, and I found it on Spread Firefox, which is this cool kind of grassroots marketing site for Firefox back in the day, where people could upload like videos and PDFs and posters, and I was like, that's really neat. What is this? Drupal. Huh, okay. And then promptly forgot about it until later. One other fun note about Summer of Code. So that we had 11 slots, and there were, you know, something like 20 people who, you know, submitted sessions. We could only select a very few of them. I originally wasn't going to be on the list, and then at the very last moment, Robert Douglas flipped my name so that I was the very last position of the people that they gave a slot to. So, whew, that was lucky. Anyway, so that kind of changed my life. So the lesson learned from here is mentoring plus. You know, especially in a very large open source community like Drupal, but even in a very simple community, you know, having well-lit paths to people who are coming in new, having onboarding, having this kind of process and stuff like that to get people started is really, really critical. And this is actually something Drupal, I think, does really, really well. So we have a formal mentoring program that's just a one-on-one, because we don't have as much money as Google does, right? So we can't do the paid internships and this kind of thing that Google's doing. But this is a cool program that Kathy Thays and Andrea, here we go, Andrea have kind of, they spun this up and ran with this, and now there's other people involved. And what it is it's time twice a week on IRC where you go and you ask whatever stupid questions that you possibly have, and they will not only answer your questions, but they'll get you hooked up with an issue to work on that matches your skill level and your interest and this kind of thing. And it's an amazing program that we have, and this kind of unique to Drupal. And I think this is just fantastic. Another thing that came out of the Drupal Boston user group is the Drupal Ladder. Drupal Ladder is a distribution that can be installed at any local user group or any camp or any con. And what it is effectively it uses the nonprofit world's terminology of a ladder. So you start at the bottom rung, which is like, this is the very basic thing you need to know. And I think in our case, it's like log into Drupal.org, or very basic. And then you work your way up the ladder, building on the skills of the thing you learned before. And then each of these ladder rungs is a lesson and has like hands-on kind of background information and stuff like this. And I've been at Boston before where they've had like a group of like, say, 50 people all working on these ladders, and they pair up, and there's people more experienced working with them. And this has been really transformative. And the thing that I love about this is it's extremely scalable. So we can do this. If we can do this in one location, we can do it in every location, and it's really, really fun that way. This initiative, Drupal Dojo, has sort of died off since. I would love to see this spun up again, though, because this was really neat. This was learners helping learners. So this was people saying, I don't know how to, say, configure Panelizer, but I know Drush. So I'm going to get up very informally in this kind of Google Hangout kind of thing, and I'm just going to talk about the thing that I know. And then other people would learn from that. And then the next week, someone else would talk about something that they knew. And it was really neat because there was none of this rock star complex, like people kind of put others on pedestals and it's intimidating. These were just other people trying to learn Drupal, helping each other. And it was really, really cool process. So I got accepted from Summer Code. I was really excited. And then my first 5 minutes in Drupal community went something like this. So I was like, hi, everybody. I'm Angie. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a Summer Code student, and yay! And then one of the developers in the channel said, rah! This is a channel for serious developers. Go away! And then I spent the afternoon hiding under a blanket. So what's interesting about this is, had I not been in Summer of Code and sort of contractually obligated to spend 3 months with the Drupal project, that probably would have been my last 5 minutes in the Drupal community. So I've kind of made it my mission since then to make sure that that does not happen to anyone ever again, because it's not cool. So the lesson learned there is full frontal nicety. You should always assume that the person coming into your community or your channel or your issue queue or wherever it is, even if they're annoying, even if they don't know all the social norms, even if they're being kind of disruptive, assume that they're going to be the next big awesome contributor as long as they're pointing in the right direction. Even if they're really pissed off. Like sometimes people get really angry and they start doing things, and I've seen, and everybody does this, I do this, it's like, it feels good to kind of just slap someone down who's kind of coming in very entitled feeling and this kind of stuff. But the thing is, a lot of times when people are really frustrated, it's because they don't know how to solve their problem. And if you show them how to solve their problem, they can be one of your biggest assets because they're motivated to try and fix whatever it is. And you have to be really, really careful of the ripple effect when you do asshole behavior. So for example, if someone comes in your IRC channel, and asks support in the wrong place, you can tell them, hey, dummy, this isn't a support channel, get out of here, go to the other place. And you can do that, and you'll feel good because you've reinforced the social norms that newbie should have known anyway, because there's a manual about it somewhere. And your friends will back you up that was the proper behavior to do. The problem is, though, anybody who saw that behavior happen is going to side with the person who got kicked out because they feel like they're being bullied. And if that interaction happened in, say, IRC, that means 300 people saw that. But if it happened in the mailing list, or if it happened in the website, that means millions of people are going to see that because Google never forgets. So it is critical that, one, you don't do this. You try and help people out in the nicest way possible. But if you do, if someone does snap, we all have bad days, and if someone does snap and sort of reacts really rudely to somebody, it's really critical that someone else jumps in and says, hey, that's not cool. That's not how we do things here. Because if that happens, then people go, okay, cool. Because people understand that everyone has a bad day, and some people are German. Just kidding. But but if they don't see that behavior countermanded, then they think that that's the social norm, and that's not cool. So one advice I have, and it's amazing how many open source projects do not have one of these, but get a code of conduct going. This is just a document. It's kind of like coding standards for people. It's like, this is how we expect you to interact with one another. And I can show you Drupal's community values, which is be considerate, be respectful, be collaborative. When we disagree, we consult others. When we're unsure, we ask for help, and step down considerately. We stole those values largely from Ubuntu, so I don't want to take credit for those or anything. But I think that this embodies the values that we would like to see in our community. And so, we really try hard to enforce that and make sure that that is the default behavior. And then you also have the place to go when, something hits the fan. So we have a community working group in the Drupal community, and this is a sort of a committee of 4 people who, when something bad happens, you send it into us, and we will figure out what to do with that. So sometimes that's as simple as having a one-on-one conversation with the person and say, hey, that was kind of out of line. Can you apologize to the person? They're like, oh no, I didn't realize, and it's done. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a long-standing issue and it requires getting a moderator involved, and there's a bunch of different things. But having somewhere to go, whether it's like the leader of your user group or whatever, somewhere to go to say, hey, this is really not okay and I need some help here, is really, really critical. So anyway, I recovered from being yelled at in IRC slowly. And then I started to get going with Drupal. And of course, I wanted to be perfect, right? Because this is open source, man. Everybody's going to see my code. They're going to judge me. Like, oh my God, that's really, really scary. And so obviously I would like sit there for hours and like read documentation. And I would try things locally, and then I'd delete them. And I'd try them again, and I'd delete them. And I would spend like days trying to bash my head against the table, trying to fix something that I really could have asked a question and gotten an answer to in 30 minutes. How many people have done this? Yeah, and that is really bad for a couple of reasons. One is because you never are going to get it perfect. But the other is a parable I will call Perfectionist Pat and Sloppy Sam. So Perfectionist Pat is very, very intelligent, and they always have a methodology about how they do things. So they write the test first, because that's how you do things, test-driven development. You want to make sure you know how the behavior is supposed to go before you write a line of code. Then they'll write code. Then they'll make sure their documentation is in order, or maybe they'll do the docs first. I don't know what they do. But anyway, they're doing all this stuff. Make sure it conforms to coding standards. Check, double check, triple check, refactor again, and then finally post to the issue queue. And I did this a lot, and I think a lot of people do this as their default, because you don't want to waste people's time. You want to look good when you put your code out there, this kind of stuff. But in an open source community, at least one like Drupal, this is not a great thing for you to do. Because let me talk about how Sloppy Sam works. So Sloppy Sam, she's trying to solve the same problem, and she looks at it and she says, oh, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just ping someone on IRC and talk about this. Is this actually a problem? Have people seen this before? And someone on IRC goes, oh yeah, I ran into that last week. And I kind of got halfway through a patch, so here's a paste bin, and maybe you can start with that. She goes, great. So she takes the pre-written code, slaps on some of her own code, posts that to an issue queue as needs work. She's like, I know this isn't right yet, but I just want to put this out there and see what people think. And they come back and they say, oh, you know what? That kind of works, but you're missing your docs and your coding standards and your tests. And so she'll, kind of go through this process and kind of ping the issue queue. No, you're missing this. Okay, I'm pinging the issue queue like this. And you might say, well, that seems horrible, right? It's like she's looking stupid 4 times in front of people and obviously doesn't know what she's doing, and why is that good? The reason that's good is because every one of these blue texts, that's a touch point with the community. And so Perfectionist Pat had 1 touch point with the community. It was really, really positive, so he gets a +1. But every time Sloppy Sam did one of these touch points, she wasn't asking in an entitled way. She's not like, you need to help me fix my problem. She was saying, I want to fix this, but I don't know how. Can you help me so I can help you? And so she ends up getting 4 positive touch points with the community, and suddenly her profile rises a lot faster than Perfectionist Pat. So even though every time we hear from Perfectionist Pat, the patch is awesome, and we love Perfectionist Pat, we don't trust him as much. We don't know how he works. We're not sure what's going on in those big week-long gaps between when we hear from him. And Perfectionist Pat can get really frustrated because sometimes he's been working on a patch for a week and a half, and here Sloppy Sam solved it in 3 days because she just talked to the right people. So you really have to be careful about that. And so my advice to you is to fail early, fail often, and fail in public. Because that's the secret to success. In an open source community, we don't know each other when it's distributed like this, and the only sort of brand you have is your little blue nickname on the website. And now a user picture, which is nice. You have to get your face out there, and the more positive interactions you have with the community, the better that's going to be. So now I was rocking and rolling, right? I was success baby. I was like, yeah, I figured out I need to just ping people all the time and stop, torturing myself. So I was making contributed modules. I was making core patches. Dries responded to my core patch, and I was like, oh my God, it's Dries! I was really excited about that. I wrote documentation for stuff I couldn't figure out. And I didn't know what was right thing to write, so I would just write something and ask if it was right, and people would say, no, that's not quite, fix this and this, and I would fix it and then show them. Again, that Sloppy Sam methodology, if I had waited till I understood the form API to write this documentation, it would never have gotten written. And it persists to this day, much to the chagrin of Jennifer Hodgson, because it's this horrible Dreamweaver page, because I was like, I don't know, I'll just bang something out, and it's sort of, Anyway, we're working on it, but I use that page all the time still to this day.
I.
Yeah, woo! Form API reference. I also did little graphics. At the time, this is terrifying. I was like the second or third best designer in the Drupal community because we had a lot of developers. Anyway, so my lesson here is encourage diversity in your contributions. Okay, it is not just about the code, and in fact, most of my early contributions weren't code related at all because I could not understand the concept of hooks. Couldn't get them. There were no books about Drupal back then. I remember just bashing my face in the wall. So in the meantime, I was updating documentation that didn't assume you knew what CVS was, in order to help other people that came behind me. I was doing stuff like answering support questions, all this kind of thing, because that's how I got involved, was through these lesser things in order to become a super coder, awesome person. And then later, I don't code at all. So there you go. So I want to talk a little bit about this idea of what is a contributor. Because a lot of people think, what is a contributor? Is someone like me, is like hairy and hunched over a laptop and like this all the time? But that is not what a contributor is. A contributor? Oh, hi. A contributor is someone who has 3 attributes, okay? They look at something and they say, well, that's dumb. And then they say, I want that thing to be fixed, and they can do something about it. If you share those 3 attributes, you are the people who help power open source. Because if you only have 2 of those attributes, if you say, well, that's dumb, and I know how to fix it, but I don't care, that's not actually going to fix anything. Or if you say, that's dumb, and I really want to see it fixed, but I can do nothing to solve it, that also isn't going to help. And a lot of people think I can do something about it means code, like writing code, but it doesn't mean that at all. It's anything that you do that pushes that issue forward towards completion. So here are just a sampling of things that can be contributions. Donations, advocacy, documentation, marketing, user support, QA testing, translations, on and on and on and on, and all these other things. Oh yeah, also encoding. Okay, so anything that I just want to encourage you. I know on the slide it said if you're coming to the sprint tomorrow, you don't have to be a developer. You really don't. I know the usability sprint could really use people who know how to copy and paste text. So if you know how to copy and paste text out of a spreadsheet, we could really use your help. For example. Okay, then we had the big server crash of 2005. This was a lot of fun. Halfway through Summer of Code, the entire server melted down and could not proceed. So basically, Dries took down the Drupal.org page and put up a temporary page with a PayPal button and said, please help. And then in 48 hours, we raised over $10,000, which was insane. And plus, Sun donated a $4,000 server. OSL donated free hosting, and we're still on their hosting to this day. This was completely insane. And my lesson here is get by with a little help from your friends. Just like Todd was saying yesterday, it's okay to ask for help. Help is empowerment. You should ask for help. People can say no, and that's fine. But if you never ask, you will never know what people can do for you. And we're currently trying this with the D8 Accelerate program. I want another round of applause for everybody who gave to this initiative and got another $500 matching unlock. That's amazing. So this is a program, like Drupal 8 is fine. Drupal 8 will come out. It'll be lovely. It's amazing. It's lovely. The reason we started this initiative, though, was because a lot of people don't realize this. Largely, core development is done by people in nights and weekends time. There's about 10 people in the community who are paid full-time to make this their job and get Drupal 8 out the door. Everybody else does it in between client projects, or they do it when they should be sleeping, or they do it when they should be hanging out with their kids, or whatever. And that is not cool, and it causes the release to be delayed, especially when you're in the bug fix slog, which is like there's no fun stuff left to do. It is all crap work that is going to take a long time, and it's very complicated, and that's the part of the release that we needed help with. And so we managed to raise, I think, about almost $230,000 or something, like a lot of money, and that money is excellent because it's going to things like an improved test bot for everybody. It went to a Drupal 8 security bounty, so we're finding a bunch of critical security problems before Drupal 8 ships, and we're also finding ones in Drupal 7 as well as part of this. So everybody is going to be improved by the types of stuff we're funding through this. We're also funding key contributors who normally would have to take Drupal 7 client work, but now can actually stay focused on Drupal 8 for weeks at a time. So this program has been instrumental in helping us to attack these really hard problems, so thank you everyone who's donated. So in 2006, there's the Open Source CMS conference in Vancouver, and not coincidentally, that's where I live now. And my mind just went like, again, because it was the first time in my entire life that I'd been in the same room with a person who, when I said Drupal, they didn't say, bless you? Because they had no idea what I was talking about. And I met these people that I really looked up to with the community, including Allie, and these people who were like, amazing and doing completely cool things with Drupal. I actually got to sit at the same table with them at like 2 in the morning in a hotel room while we tried to get Drupal 4.7 out. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Anyway, because we had added this really big API change, and it was taking longer than we thought to kind of get it out the door. We don't really learn any lessons. But anyway, but it was hugely empowering, because I don't even remember what I was working on, but the idea that I could sit at this table with other people and work on something that was going to help further this goal that the entire community really needed, that was hugely empowering to me, and it kind of got me hooked. So my advice to other communities is to provide opportunities to meet in meet space. That real-life interaction is critical. You get such a richer interaction than you do in real life. And it's funny because Moshe is the guy leading he's the guy in the green sweater who's leading this sprint. And I always thought Moshe was like this really mean guy, like, oh, Moshe, he's scary. And it turns out Moshe is just really busy. And so he's terse. But if you meet him in real life, he's like the nicest guy, and I give you a big hug and stuff like that. So just having those interactions and being able to interact with people after meeting them in real life, it changes everything. So some ways that we provide these meet space opportunities, we have over, I think it's 300 local user groups in various places in the world. Tell me about the Twin Cities local user group.
We have 3 meetups every month, and we're all on groups.drupal.org/twincities.
Okay.
There's this camp. There is an unconference in the winter, and not all of the meetups are code-focused at all. One of them that I like is the one that we go to a bar and hang out and talk, and maybe the word Drupal comes up or not.
Nice. That's my kind of meetup. Yep, and so there's regional camps and cons like this one. How many people have been to a Drupal con? About half. Yeah, it's like this, but like ramped up to 12 or something. It's like way more people, way more everything. But I actually kind of like the camp scene better because you can actually talk to people and find people you want to see. Sprints is another huge thing. This is where you get your laptop out and you're sitting next to people doing awesome work, and you're doing awesome work, and you become one of us. Not to sound too culty or anything, but but it's really, really fun, and you can meet the person who wrote the module that you use on your website and buy them a beer or whatever, that kind of stuff. And speaking of sprints, once again, pimping the sprint tomorrow. Please come. It's going to be awesome, even though it's in Bloomington. Sorry about that. Just kidding. Okay. So it's close to the airport, if that helps. Okay. Okay. So Drupal 4.7 was eventually released in 2006. Yay! And so the next thing that Dries did was he posted this post, and it's too small, so I'll just read the gist of it. The gist of it is he wanted to know what people in the community plan to work on for Drupal 5. And this wasn't, what do you want to see happen? This wasn't, what are your feature requests? This was, you, community member, what are you going to work on in Drupal 5? And so we got answers like, I want to work on installation profiles, like the idea that you can package up versions of Drupal and like pre-install them pre-configured. And that happened. Somebody said, I hate Bloomerine, I want to replace it with something better. That happened. And of course, I'm a total underachiever, so this was my suggestions for what I wanted to take on in Drupal. Of which I think I did none of those things, but I helped a bunch of other people do theirs. So a lesson learned is cultivate that feeling of do-ocracy, the feeling that I can do this. Like, it's just exactly what Todd was talking about yesterday. It's like empower people. Say, I don't know if you can get this done or not, but why don't you give it a shot? This is your project. Go with it. See what happens. Because that is a really, really empowering thing, and it causes people to do amazing things that you have no idea that they're able to do. And that's how Drupal has evolved the way it has. So in 2007, I took on 100 other responsibilities. In 2008, my friend surprised me with this crazy award at OSCON, which was nuts. I also got appointed as a Drupal 7 basically release manager. So Drupal 7 is my fault. I'm sorry. We tried really hard. It has images. Anyway. Well, that's thanks to Nate, but yeah. So, it was basically this year where all of a sudden it was like getting recognized for a bunch of work. It's really important to recognize contributors. Nobody needs a pat on the back to like keep going, to be really excited about Drupal. But it doesn't hurt. You know, it never hurts to tell someone they're doing a good job and kind of give them some kind of a thing. So I do this a lot. I do shout outs. If I find out someone just had their first core patch or something, I will retweet that. And a lot of people will respond and be like, yeah, that's awesome. Go you. Yay. It just really makes people feel really good. I also send people personal messages on their contact form. Like sometimes I'll see someone I don't know and they're really being diplomatic in the issue queue and kind of helping diffuse a good situation. And be like, hey, thank you for doing that. Thank you for helping keep our community awesome, you know. And it means a lot to people when they hear that, especially if you're, you know, kind of the higher up the echelon you are. But even if it's something you don't know, just hearing thanks once in a while is really, really nice. We also do this thing called Community Spotlight, where we sort of give the limelight to a less known, for now, because usually they become known after, person in the community. And these are really critical too, because people get like a complex about, I guess, people like me now, but you know what I mean? It's like there's rock stars and, oh, a Drupal rock star. And these people aren't Drupal rock stars. They're people who learned Drupal because they had, you know, they were non-technical and they had to learn it for work, or because they just got really into it because a friend told them about it or whatever. And these are like real people. And people see themselves in these people, and they often come in and say, hey, I could do that. I could totally do that. And it's a great way to not only value the individual who gave that much, but it's also a way to you know, sort of invite others in who see people that look like them. We also do some metrics. So this is a metric I'm not particularly fond of because it sort of creates a leaderboard mentality. But what this is a tag cloud of the people who've got patches in core weighted according to how many patches. So you see a big Daniel Wayner, Tim Plunkett, and then everybody else. These are nice because, like, I have, but you know, they're great for recognizing people. But I have seen people look at this and say, "Oh, I'm going to make my name as big as Peter Willenen's name," you know. And so you got to be careful about this kind of metric because it does sort of foster like a competitive nature in your community, like still positively competitive because you're trying to outdo each other and giving away your help for free, but you know, just got to watch that a little bit. One particular metric I like a lot better is we have on Drupal.org the way to designate someone as a mentor. And this is a really awesome thing because there's no leaderboard of how many people mentored other people. It's just a way to show like this person helps other people and these people got value out of that, and it's a great way to, you know, sort of show that reciprocal relationship. So from 2001 to present, I have basically, I started at Acquia, and my job at Acquia is to grow Drupal and make the community awesome. And so I've done things in that role like, you know, get us a listing of distributions linked off the homepage, fix the distribution profile so you can actually do, you know, reference external code libraries and use non-GPL libraries in your distributions. I've done things like, I don't know. I led an initiative when Drupal 7 just came out to try and get all the key contributed modules ported and worked with contributed module leaders on that. A lot of these kinds of things that sort of empower the community to do things, and they're things that I don't think would get done where they're not somebody kind of in a position to be able to lead these types of initiatives. So the couple of lessons from here, one is scale yourself. As you know, kind of grow up in your community, you're going to eventually have taken on way too much, and you won't be able to do it all. So you should find others who share your same qualities and empower them to take on some of what you do. And you know, they'll probably surprise you and do it way better. Like I used to do mentoring, in that I used to like sit on IRC for 4 hours and walk someone through how to do a patch. But the way that, you know, Kathy and Zendoodles have been able to systematize it and actually make it a thing, that is way better than what I was doing. So even though I don't do mentoring anymore, the people who have got it way better than I do. Also, don't forget to take care of yourself, too, which I never do, but I figured if I put it on a slide, I might remember someday. The other lesson is to scale your community. So, you know, one of the things that happens is you're a key person, you take on all of this stuff, you feel this enormous sense of responsibility, and you feel like you can't possibly leave, because if you did, all of these things are going to fall apart without you. So one of the things that we've done in the Drupal project is we've established project governance. We don't want to kill the duocracy. The duocracy is amazing, and that's how like awesome things and amazing things you don't expect happen. But yet, you can't have a situation where, in our community, there's this guy, Jeremy Thorson, who doesn't work on Drupal at all for pay. He is a hobbyist who works at a telco, but was getting paged every time TestBot went down. You have to set up infrastructure so that people don't get into that situation, and there's a group of people behind them, and they can make things work. And also, these things have been helpful for making decisions. So for example, one of the things that the user manual project I talked about wanted to do was you know, have a CC BY SA license on the stuff that they produced, which they wanted to keep in Git. Git. Had we not had a licensing working group established at the time they needed this request, we probably would have been like, blah, 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 and it would have just like fell on the floor because of something silly like that. So this kind of thing is really critical to make sure that your key people have support and to make sure that you have a place to escalate in order to make key decisions. So to recap what we learned that we want to corrupt young minds early, especially girls. We want to destroy Einstein. Mentoring is awesome. We should be nice to everybody. Fail early, fail often, and fail in public. Ask for help when you need it. You should encourage diversity, both in your contributors and also in your contributions. So, I would love to see lots and lots of types of people in this room doing lots and lots of awesome things. Meet in meet space, cultivate a democracy, recognize contributors, and scale both yourself and your community. Questions. I can take questions either on that or on anything Drupal related because I kind of have been around for a while and know stuff about everything. If there was ever a kerfuffle, I was probably involved. So there you go. Anyway, thank you. I answered all of your questions. Great. Really? No one's going to ask me when is Drupal 8 coming out? Yes.
When is Drupal 8 coming out?
Actually, I have a better answer for this. So the official answer, when is Drupal 8 coming out, is when it's ready. And that will always be the answer. But I can tell you it will be at least 6 weeks after RC1. And I can tell you RC1 will be shortly after we hit 0 critical issues. And we are currently at, is it 28? You got to catch it, though, because it changes on a secondly basis.
Your slide said 20, so...
Yeah, I know. That was taken a couple days ago. So 28 issues. That darn security bounty is causing that number to spike, but it's good. It's like all stuff we're much better find in beta than after. So what's going to happen is that number, this page is Drupal.org/... This page that only I can see, because that's helpful. One moment. That's funny, because, anyway, okay. Then we have this. There we go. Now you see that? Yes, good. Okay, so Drupal.org/Drupal-8.0/getting-involved, because it's not a real easy URL unless it has both dots and slashes and hyphens in it. Anyway, so there's 28 of these buggers remaining.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yep, and there's a little burn down chart. You can see we were at a high of 130 back just after DrupalCon. What was the one? Amsterdam? Was that it? Yeah, I guess it was. Oh, that seems like ages ago. Yeah, so it's been steadily going down. This sawtooth pattern is often caused because either people use it and find things, which just stop using Drupal 8. Just don't do it. Or if you find something, just leave it alone. Don't tell us about it. I'm just kidding. So either that happens, or often actually why those sawtooth things happen is because we find an issue that's like, fix the things, and we're like, well, we can't fix that issue. So we spin it off into 5 issues that we can actually fix. So it's actually sometimes positive when that number goes up because it means we're actually honing down and finding the actual issues that we can finish. So once that reaches 0, then we will release RC1, release candidate 1, and then release candidates go, we'll keep releasing release candidates so we have no more criticals for at least a little while. And the nice thing about that is when we're in release candidate, we will not be committing any patches that are not critical bug fixes. So we're hoping that during RC we can have a much briefer RC period, and we're not going to be changing a bunch of things that are breaking other stuff. So that should be good. The other big announcement I want to say about Drupal 8 is as of yesterday, we now require hook update and, we now require upgrade paths for all core issues. What that means is if you have a Drupal 8 site that you're building in development, you no longer have to destroy the entire thing and rebuild it every time. You may still have to do that from time. Yeah, that's worth a round of applause, right? Yeah. So, oops. This was announced in typing. You'd think I would be able to type, but sadly no. This was announced the other day. So this is great because Drupal 8 is definitely not production ready yet. I just told you it has at least 28 problems in it, plus security is in there, plus other things. So don't write production sites on it yet. But if you are building dev sites and you kind of are comfortable bringing your own bug fixes and you're comfortable porting modules and this kind of stuff, you can actually start to do that as of beta 12. So that's actually really big news, and I hope that's going to empower more early adopters to get involved. And you'll probably find more bugs, but at least we'll know about them early, and we'll be able to fix them before release. So that is what I have to say about when Drupal 8 will come out. I still am hopeful that it will be in 2015. I think that if we can get an RC1 by Barcelona, which is the end of September, that is possible. If we don't, then it will probably be pushed to 2016. Other questions? Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about the change to semantic versioning and like what the plan is for updating Drupal 8 going forward? And
Yeah.
et cetera?
Yep. So the question was about semantic versioning, and let me see if I can find the handbook page we have on this is not great. We need a better one, but that way I can have a little diagram. Drupal core. So this is a change that we're making as of Drupal 8. Well, what's funny is we used to have semantic versioning. Semantic versioning means something dot something dot something, right? Well, it's more than that, but like the 3-digit dot. We used to have this, we just didn't use it semantically at all. So like from 4.6 to 4.7, we rewrote the entire form API and all this other stuff. Whoops, that's not it. I don't know. This one. Yeah. That's really confusing, so I'll just talk, but at least then later you can refer to this. So essentially what's going to happen is once 8.0 ships, we start a 6-month release cycle of what are called minor versions of Drupal, 8.1.0, 8.2.0, 8.3.0, and those will be able to have non-backwards compatibility breaking features and API additions in them. So that means you no longer have to wait 4.5 years, we currently are at, for the next big thing to happen in Drupal. It will happen on a schedule every 6 months. And that is probably worth a round of applause because that is crazy. Work made me read this book called Lean Startup. And have anybody read that book? Okay, I can save you $20. Basically, the idea. Oh, I have a whiteboard. Oh, I do, but this is not a whiteboard marker. I've done that before. Permanent markers, don't keep them in your whiteboard. So anyway, imagine a circle. And what you have is you have a build phase of the circle, you have a measure phase of the circle, and you have a learn phase of the circle, right? So you build a thing, you measure it, you like say how many people clicked that link or didn't, or this kind of thing. You learn from that measurement that you took, and then you build again to fix the thing. And the tighter you can make those circles, the better off you're going to be. So a lot of companies like Twitter or Google or Amazon are the big ones. They will be able to do rolling deployments, and they can do A/B testing, and they can figure out instantly whether this feature worked better than this feature. In Drupal, we just build, right? And then occasionally we measure, and we try to learn, but by then the building has already happened, and it's all kind of all out of whack. This is going to be great because it allows us to get back on that circle loop. We can build a thing, we can measure it while it's still in development, and all of the users and the developers are working on the same version of Drupal. And then we can learn from that and then make another build. And so every 6 months, we can make Drupal much, much better. We'll also have the monthly bug fix and security release schedule, just as we always have. Drupal 9 is still going to happen, and it's still going to break APIs. But the deal with Drupal 9 is we're not going to bother branching that until much, much later. We're going to branch that when we've kind of exhausted all the cool things we can do with Drupal 8 without breaking APIs, and when there's this whole sort of library of wow, that would change the whole game with Drupal. Wow, look at that. We have 4 or 5 big things like that basically done or very close to done, and we're actually going to have a compelling product for Drupal. That's the point where we would switch to Drupal 9. And at that point, we would put Drupal 8 in what's called an LTS mode, where it basically gets security fixes, and that's about it. The good thing about that, though, is it'd also be stable. It wouldn't be changing every 6 months. It would just be the platform that it is. So we've done a lot to try and mitigate some of these effects of the big 4-year-long release cycles. Drupal 9 might take 4 years or 5 years even to come out, but that's okay because you won't have to wait 5 years for the next big thing. You will well have to wait 5 years for an object-oriented form API or an object-oriented render API, these kinds of things, because we can't do that without breaking backwards compatibility. But in the meantime, you can benefit from incremental feature releases. So we could do things like add path auto to core or media to core, or just take Dave Reed and put him in core. But we could do things like that, and every 6 months have cool new features. And I think that's going to really help us fill some of the feature gaps that people expect. It's also going to allow us to incrementally improve the usability of Drupal and a bunch of other things. So, does that help?
Yeah.
Cool. Yes. Sorry.
Will that release cycle be on the calendar cycle like Ubuntu does?
Yeah, we'll have to discuss it. It depends when Drupal 8 comes out, right? And it's done when it's done. Let's imagine a world where Drupal 8 came out December 1st. And then it's June 1st would be the day that so we'd want to pick an easy to remember day, not like the third Wednesday of the 5th month of the, you know what I mean? We'll figure something out and pick a date that people can remember. But yeah, the idea would be that it would be 6 months after Drupal 8 comes out. We could possibly adjust that. We could have, like, say, 8 months between 8.0 and 8.1 intentionally. My feeling is 8.1.0 is going to be mostly just crap we didn't find. You know, it's going to be mostly maintenance rather than new features. I think 8.2 and 8.3 are going to be the place we get the really big ones. But yeah, we're going to try really hard to make it easy for everybody. But it will be a 6-month cycle from whenever. What does Ubuntu do? Is it December and June, or
April and November.
October and April.
So we're not going to do that because nobody can agree on that. So we'll try and make it easy for people. But yeah. Yes.
Can you talk about issue workspaces and
Yeah.
when that might start happening?
So, if anybody, I don't know how many people know about this. So, we need to have a discussion about why is Drupal not on GitHub? Good night, everybody. Okay. So the reason Drupal is not on GitHub is because when you look at how our issue queue works and our tracking and how our community really evolved, the fact that the issue queue is effectively a wiki and anybody can post a patch, anybody can change a status, anyone can make a new issue, anyone can do, that has been fundamental to the way that our community has evolved. Because you have a lot of non-technical users and they come in and they don't know what they're doing, and that's fine because we can teach them. And the idea of everybody working in the same place, the idea of being able to move issues seamlessly from one project to the other. Oh, this isn't actually a panels issue, this is a views issue. Whoop, and you move it over there. There's a lot of functionality in our issue tracker that we really need and is fundamental to what makes Drupal awesome. You know, the idea that you have different workflows that an issue goes into. And GitHub's issue workflow tools just are not there yet. And the couple of Drupal projects that have tried to use GitHub have to use kind of horrible workarounds, like a bot that programmatically adds everybody to the maintainers list of things, and then a separate project for the code, and then the issues are over here, and it's kind of just a big mess. So it's not to rule out that we won't ever move to GitHub, but at the moment, they are not featureful enough for what we need in our collaborative, highly, you know, sort of working together community. So what the Drupal Association is going to do they have a thing here? Oh, that's scary. All right, I'll just talk about it. So what they're going to do is effectively turn each issue into a Git repository behind the scenes. And so when you create a patch, it will automatically create a branch in Git, and you won't have to do patch rerolls anymore because you can just use regular Gitty things for that. So we're going to effectively move, when we moved to Git, which was in 2011, it was basically like, let's get rid of CVS and just replace it with exactly what we have in Git, because we didn't want to enforce this huge learning curve on everybody. Going from a centralized to decentralized system is a bit of a to begin with. So we basically use Git as a hierarchical version control system, which is a little silly. This would allow us to use Git as an actual distributed version control system, and so it would look something like this, where someone starts a patch, someone makes a change, someone else builds off their change, and it goes back and forth. The reason, another argument for not doing GitHub, by the way, is this thing. GitHub works really great if you have someone who's around regularly and can merge in your patches for you, but if you don't, it starts to look like this. And that is a huge problem for us, because our whole community is people who flit in and out at completely random intervals, and you can't depend on anybody. Which is great. We love them, but we can't depend on them. And so by keeping the nature of our issue queue where people can come in random willy-nilly and make an improvement here and then go away for 6 months, but everyone's still working centrally in the same place, I think that's going to be a really good middle ground. So we can actually use Git as Git intended. We can keep our centralized collaboration workflow. And then that also puts us in a position where if GitHub ever does catch up with us in terms of their issue queue tracking, we can move over there with a lot less friction than we would being able to move from Git as CVS on. So when is this being worked on? There's a Drupal.org roadmap. And where they are right now is they're working on Drupal CI, which is the next generation test bot. So the next generation test bot has things like it can test in multiple PHP environments, multiple database systems. We need that for Drupal 8. We got to know that Drupal 8 is passing on SQLite and Postgres. So once they get that to a good place, issue workspace is the next thing they're going to be working on. And I would hope it would start development by Barcelona, if not before then. So I did a horrible job explaining issue workspaces. Mark, did you want to try and do a better job since you're excited about it, I assume?
I was interested in hearing more about it. I mean, I thought it was just like cool that it was less the patch workflow. It was
Yeah.
like a workspace where I guess the understanding I had was really like you can make commits and things against
Yep.
that. And then once it's ready, then it's like a feature branch.
Exactly. And there'll be little UI tools for like, commit this patch or make a branch here or this kind of, just like GitHub does. We also want to put the inline editing feature of GitHub in here too. So if you don't know what Git is, but you want to fix the text, you can do that. You just go in and you edit it and you save, and you don't ever have to know that Git is involved at all. And then we're keeping backwards compatibility for the patch workflow in the meantime, so people who are used to like getting into the command line, making a file, uploading it somewhere can still do that, and then behind the scenes it will do all the Git magic for you. So this is going to be quite an undertaking, but I think it's going to just transform our community and make us much more efficient and happier and awesomer. So never underestimate the value of awesomer tools in really fueling growth and happiness. I think I'm out of time. Is that correct? All right.
Great.
Thank you so much, everybody.